Imagine being 70 years old and still juggling bills, loans, and credit card statements, all while watching the world insist that retirement should be a golden period of rest and freedom. For many Americans, this narrative is pure fiction. My name is Alice, and I am 70, still working part-time and still in debt. My story is not unique. It reflects a systemic reality that most of society refuses to confront. When I was younger, I believed that hard work guaranteed stability. I saved, I paid my taxes, I tried to budget, and I thought that the future would reward me with a comfortable life. But the truth is harsher. Life, in all its unpredictability, has a way of dismantling even the most careful plans. Health issues, unexpected economic downturns, and rising living costs have made the dream of a peaceful retirement nearly impossible to achieve. The numbers tell a stark story. According to recent studies, almost 4 in 10 Americans over 65 still have debt, and many of them carry balances that exceed their annual income. For someone like me, this isn't just a statistic, it is every morning's reality. As I calculate how to stretch a Social Security check to cover rent, utilities, and medication. These numbers are more than financial. They are a reflection of social inequality, the erosion of public support for seniors, and a society that prizes consumption over long-term stability. Debt at 70 is not a sign of personal failure. It is a symptom of structural pressures. The cost of healthcare alone has skyrocketed. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, healthcare spending for seniors has nearly doubled over the past 2 decades. And Medicare often leaves significant gaps that seniors must cover out of pocket. Then there's housing. Whether renting or owning, the price of living has soared, and property taxes, insurance, and maintenance eat into budgets that were never designed to accommodate such costs. Even simple necessities like groceries, gas, and home maintenance have become sources of stress. Every decision is weighted. Should I skip a needed prescription this month to pay my electricity bill? Can I afford a car repair without dipping into credit cards again? These are decisions no senior should face. Yet for many, they are daily realities. It's a juggling act that takes a toll not just financially, but emotionally, psychologically, and socially. This crisis extends beyond individuals. It is emblematic of a society that glorifies early retirement fantasies, encourages debt accumulation, and neglects the structural frameworks that should protect its aging population. The expectation is that if you planned correctly, you should be fine. But what no one admits is that even meticulous planning is no shield against a lifetime of economic instability, wage stagnation, and societal pressures that disproportionately affect the elderly. Debt at my age is also a social invisibility. Society tends to romanticize the elderly as wise and free from financial concerns. But the reality is that many seniors are invisible in economic discourse. Policies rarely address the financial vulnerability of older adults, and media narratives often sideline the struggles of people who are financially strained post-retirement. Instead, the conversation centers on the luxury retirement dream vacations, cruises, and passive income, creating a cultural blind spot for those who don't fit the idyllic mold. In telling my story, I hope to illuminate a critical truth. Being 70 and still in debt is not just a personal struggle, it is a societal failure. It is a reflection of economic systems that reward short-term gains over long-term security, policies that leave seniors exposed, and a culture that stigmatizes debt as a personal moral failing rather than an inevitable outcome of structural inequities. Debt at this age is a lens through which we can examine broader societal issues, intergenerational inequality, the commodification of healthcare, and the social neglect of aging populations. My reality, uncomfortable and relentless as it is, forces a confrontation with questions many prefer to ignore. What does it say about a society that cannot guarantee basic economic dignity for its elders? How did we arrive at a world where decades of labor do not equate to financial safety? To understand why a 70-year-old like me is still in debt, we have to look beyond individual choices and examine the economic and social structures that make this scenario inevitable for so many. It is easy, and often comforting, to blame personal financial mismanagement, but doing so ignores the broader forces at play. Wage stagnation, rising living costs, healthcare inflation, and insufficient social safety nets. Consider wages first. Over the past 40 years, real wages for the average American worker have barely budged when adjusted for inflation, despite massive increases in productivity. People are working harder and longer, yet the compensation rarely keeps pace with the cost of living. When you combine stagnant wages with the rising costs of healthcare, housing, and basic goods, financial security becomes a moving target, one that many, including seniors, can never quite reach. Healthcare, in particular, is a silent debt driver. Medicare covers a significant portion of healthcare costs, but not all. Prescription drugs, dental care, hearing aids, vision services, these are often not included, and they accumulate quickly. A single hospital visit or medical procedure can wipe out months of careful budgeting. For those without robust private insurance, which many retirees cannot afford, medical bills become a perpetual source of debt, turning health emergencies into financial crises. Housing is another critical factor. Over the past decade, rental prices have surged in urban and suburban areas alike, and property taxes continue to climb for homeowners. Seniors who do not own property outright or who find themselves unable to refinance face monthly expenses that often exceed fixed incomes. The irony is stark. Decades of labor, decades of contributions to Social Security, and yet basic shelter remains a source of financial anxiety. Then there's debt accumulation itself. The credit system, designed to encourage spending and growth, does not differentiate between youth and the elderly. Credit cards, personal loans, and even buy now, pay later schemes ensnare older adults who simply need to bridge gaps between income and necessity. Interest rates and fees compound the problem, turning small shortfalls into long-term debt burdens. For many seniors, these financial tools, once useful in moderation, become traps that are difficult to escape. Social policy plays a pivotal role as well. The assumption that Social Security or pension plans will be enough to sustain individuals through retirement is increasingly outdated. Pension coverage has dwindled, and Social Security benefits, though vital, are often insufficient when combined with rising costs of living. Policies intended to protect the elderly exist in theory but falter in practice, leaving many to navigate a complex and expensive financial landscape with minimal guidance or support. The societal perception of debt adds another layer of complexity. In American culture, debt is often stigmatized as a moral failing, as if the individual alone is at fault. This narrative obscures the structural realities that make debt nearly unavoidable for aging populations. Older adults in debt are portrayed as irresponsible, yet the truth is far more nuanced. They are victims of a system that rewards early consumption, underpays labor, and inflates the cost of living while offering inadequate safety nets. Furthermore, intergenerational pressures exacerbate the issue. Many seniors find themselves supporting adult children or even grandchildren financially, while simultaneously trying to preserve a modest standard of living for themselves. This dual obligation intensifies the strain, creating a scenario where debt is not merely a personal burden but a reflection of wider social expectations and familial responsibilities. In short, being 70 and still in debt is not an anomaly, it is the predictable outcome of intersecting economic pressures, social expectations, and systemic inadequacies. It reveals the fragility of the so-called retirement dream and forces a reevaluation of what society owes its elders. Debt, in this context, is not shameful. It is symptomatic of a collective failure to provide economic dignity and security in the final decades of life. Living in debt at 70 is not just a financial challenge, it is a psychological and social burden that permeates every aspect of life. The stress is constant, gnawing at your sense of dignity and self-worth. Every decision when to pay a bill, whether to buy food, how to manage transportation, becomes a moral calculus, a daily negotiation between survival and independence. This stress does not exist in isolation. It impacts physical health, mental well-being, and social relationships. Debt at this stage of life often leads to social isolation. Many seniors avoid social gatherings because they cannot afford the small expenses that make participation possible: a cup of coffee with a friend, a bus fare, or a ticket to a local event. This isolation compounds the psychological toll, as loneliness is strongly correlated with depression and cognitive decline in older adults. What society often fails to recognize is that financial insecurity is not merely about money. It is about the erosion of human connection, the subtle but profound way in which debt marginalizes older adults. Moreover, the burden of debt affects health directly. Stress hormones like cortisol are elevated when financial anxiety is chronic, increasing the risk of heart disease, diabetes, and other age-related illnesses. Seniors who cannot afford medications or follow-up care are often forced into dangerous compromises, jeopardizing their longevity and quality of life. For many, this creates a vicious cycle. Debt leads to stress, stress leads to health issues lead to more debt, and the cycle repeats itself. Economically, seniors in debt are also at the mercy of market fluctuations. Inflation, interest rate changes, and economic downturns disproportionately impact those living on fixed incomes. When expenses rise but income remains stagnant, debt grows not because of poor choices, but because the system itself has failed to align financial stability with human longevity. This creates a form of economic insecurity that is both personal and societal, challenging the notion that retirement is a time of rest and safety. The social dimension cannot be overlooked. Seniors in debt often face subtle stigmatization from younger generations, media narratives, and even family members. There is a cultural expectation that aging should equate to wisdom and comfort, but reality tells a different story. This stigma silences many older adults, making them reluctant to discuss their struggles openly. In turn, this lack of visibility prevents broader societal recognition of the systemic issues at play, perpetuating cycles of neglect and misunderstanding. Debt also shapes decision-making in ways that ripple through communities. Seniors may delay necessary medical treatments, avoid home maintenance, or forego social engagement, impacting public health, housing safety, and social cohesion. The financial strain is not just an individual problem. It has collective consequences, influencing everything from local economies to public health systems. Yet there is resilience embedded in these realities. Many seniors, despite crushing debt, continue to contribute to society through volunteer work, caregiving, or sharing skills acquired over decades. They adapt, innovate, and find creative ways to survive within constraints. But resilience should not be confused with fairness. The fact that someone can endure financial hardship does not mean that society should rely on endurance as a solution. It is a sobering reminder that policy, culture, and economics must evolve to reflect the needs of aging populations rather than idealized notions of retirement. Ultimately, debt at 70 exposes the fragility of our social contract. It raises urgent questions. What is the role of society in protecting its elders? How do we reconcile decades of labor with the reality of financial insecurity? And perhaps most importantly, how do we ensure that future generations are not trapped in the same cycle of unrelenting debt and societal neglect? These questions demand more than empathy, they demand systemic change. Facing debt at 70 forces us to confront uncomfortable truths, but it also demands a search for solutions both individual and systemic. On a personal level, seniors like me often turn to part-time work, downsizing, or even relocating to more affordable areas. While these strategies can offer temporary relief, they rarely address the root causes. Working past retirement age is taxing physically and emotionally, especially when health challenges are already present. Downsizing may reduce housing costs, but can also strip away the sense of home and community that is vital for well-being. Relocation, though financially pragmatic, carries social and logistical challenges that cannot be overlooked. Financial literacy programs tailored to seniors exist, but they are limited in scope. Many focus on younger adults, emphasizing long-term investment or early debt management, less relevant for someone who is already facing decades of accrued debt. Seniors often require guidance that is practical, immediate, and sensitive to the realities of age, health, and mobility. Unfortunately, the support available often falls short, leaving individuals to navigate complex financial landscapes alone. Policy-level solutions offer some hope, but are fraught with limitations. Expanding Social Security benefits, improving Medicare coverage, and introducing subsidized housing programs can alleviate some pressures. Yet these initiatives are underfunded and politically contested. Even well-intentioned reforms take years to implement, often leaving the current generation of seniors in limbo. Moreover, policy solutions rarely address the psychological and social dimensions of debt, such as stigma, isolation, and the erosion of agency that accompany financial insecurity. Community support networks play a critical role as well. Nonprofit organizations, senior centers, and local volunteer programs provide essential services from food assistance to financial counseling. But these resources are unevenly distributed and often under-resourced. The reliance on charitable support highlights a troubling societal pattern: the expectation that community goodwill should substitute for comprehensive, systemic protection. While these programs make a real difference for individuals, they are a band-aid on a much deeper structural problem. Debt also intersects with family dynamics in complex ways. Adult children may provide financial assistance, but this can create intergenerational tensions or feelings of inadequacy for both parties. Some seniors feel forced to choose between preserving family dignity and securing their own financial survival, a dilemma that illustrates how deeply debt infiltrates not only personal finances, but the moral and relational fabric in society. Perhaps the most challenging aspect of addressing senior debt is the culture of denial surrounding aging and financial vulnerability. Media and marketing often portray retirement as a carefree period, glossing over the economic realities that most face. This narrative discourages honest conversations, leaving seniors feeling ashamed, invisible, and unsupported. The cultural silence around elder debt prevents collective action, reinforces stigma, and perpetuates policy neglect. Ultimately, solutions must be multi-layered. They require individual agency, robust social safety nets, policy reform, community engagement, and a cultural shift in how society perceives aging and debt. No single approach is sufficient. The complexity of the problem mirrors the complexity of our social and economic systems. Addressing debt at 70 is not merely about balancing a checkbook, it is about reshaping a society that too often undervalues the financial security and dignity of its elders. Reaching the age of 70, while still burdened by debt, is more than a personal struggle. It is a reflection of a society that has systematically failed its elders. My story, though deeply personal, is echoed in households across the country. Seniors are working longer, borrowing more, and sacrificing their health and social lives just to survive. This is not a question of individual responsibility. It is a question of societal responsibility. As I reflect on decades of labor, contributions to Social Security, and careful budgeting, I recognize the harsh reality. Financial stability in old age can no longer be assumed. The promises that were whispered to us in youth that retirement would be secure, comfortable, and free have proven hollow for far too many. Yet, acknowledging this reality is the first step toward meaningful change. It forces a reckoning, not only with personal choices, but with systemic inequities that span generations. The lessons are clear. Society must provide stronger social safety nets, policies that reflect the real cost of aging, and cultural recognition that debt at 70 is not shameful, it is structural. Communities must offer tangible support and visibility to those struggling in silence. Families, while important, cannot be expected to shoulder the burden alone. And most importantly, we must collectively shift the narrative. Aging should not mean invisibility, shame, or financial vulnerability. Debt at 70 is a stark mirror of broader economic and social failures, but it also illuminates resilience, resourcefulness, and the courage of seniors who continue to navigate a world that seems increasingly indifferent to their plight. Sharing these stories challenges society to confront uncomfortable truths and demands urgent reform, better healthcare coverage, stronger pension systems, affordable housing solutions, and accessible financial guidance tailored to seniors. These measures are not luxuries, they are necessities, vital for restoring dignity and security to those who have contributed a lifetime to building the society we all inhabit. In the end, being 70 and still in debt is a reality that cannot be ignored. It is a call to action for policymakers, communities, families, and individuals alike. It is a reminder that economic stability is not a privilege, it is a right, and society must uphold this right for all, especially for those who have aged into it. Only by confronting these issues honestly, collectively, and urgently can we ensure that the next generation of seniors does not inherit the same cycle of debt, insecurity, and marginalization. My hope is that by telling my story, we begin to see debt at 70 not as a personal failure, but as a societal challenge, and that this perspective drives the change that is so urgently needed. Because dignity in aging should not be optional, and financial security should not be a dream deferred indefinitely. It should be a reality for every person, at every stage of life.